I'm sitting in Paul's law office, staring at papers that don't make sense. Mildred's will is spread across his mahogany desk like a map to somewhere I never thought I'd go. Outside, rain hits the windows in that steady way that makes you want to disappear into yourself. Everything, Paul says again, his voice careful. The mansion in Hillcrest, the investment portfolio, the art collection. All of it goes to you, Chloe. I can't breathe properly. This is the same woman who never hugged me. Never smiled at my birthday parties. Never said she loved me, not once in 24 years. The woman who watched me struggle through college without offering a penny, who sat silent at family gatherings while everyone else laughed. The same woman who, apparently, thought I deserved everything she'd built. But why? The words come out smaller than I intended. She barely tolerated me. Paul adjusts his glasses, and I see something like sadness cross his face. Your aunt was complicated, Chloe. She had her reasons for everything. My phone buzzes. A text from a number I don't recognize. Chloe, honey, it's your mother, Abigail. We heard about Mildred. Can we meet? We have so much to catch up on. I show Paul the message. His jaw tightens. How long has it been since you heard from them? 15 years. I whisper. Maybe longer. My name is Chloe. I'm 24. And I'm about to learn that absence speaks louder than presence ever could. If you believe silence can speak louder than words, subscribe to Revenge with Suzi. It helps me reach more people and keeps me going to bring you more stories like this. And tell me in the comments, would you have done anything differently? The coffee shop they chose is one of those expensive places where everything costs twice what it should. I arrive early, old habit, and watch through the window as Jorge and Abigail pull up in a car that's newer than anything I've ever owned. They look good, healthy, like people who've never missed a meal or worried about rent. Jorge's wearing a suit that probably costs more than my monthly salary, and Abigail's handbag has that subtle shine that screams designer. Chloe! Abigail rushes toward me with arms spread wide, like we're long-lost friends instead of strangers who share DNA. Oh, sweetheart, look at you. You're so beautiful. The hug feels like hugging a stranger, which, I suppose, she is. Jorge hangs back, hands in his pockets, offering a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. You've grown up, he says, like that's some kind of revelation. We sit. They order the most expensive items on the menu without looking at prices. I get black coffee. We were so sorry to hear about Mildred, Abigail says, reaching across the table to touch my hand. Her nails are perfect. She was always so intense. But family is family, right? Where were you? The question slips out before I can stop it. When I was 8 and had pneumonia? When I graduated high school? Oh, honey. Abigail's voice gets that practiced, sympathetic tone. We wanted to be there. But Mildred, she made it very clear we weren't welcome in your life. She was so controlling. Jorge nods earnestly. We tried to fight for you, Chloe. But she had lawyers. Money. She convinced the courts that we were unfit. The coffee tastes bitter. I remember being 8, lying in a hospital bed, asking the nurses when my parents were coming. I remember Mildred sitting in the uncomfortable chair beside my bed, reading financial reports while I slept, never leaving until I was better. She never mentioned you tried, I say quietly. Of course she didn't. Abigail's grip on my hand tightens. She wanted you all to herself. But now we can be a real family. We can make up for all that lost time. I notice she hasn't asked how I am, how I've been living, what I've been doing for the past 15 years. The conversation flows around me like water, all focused on Mildred's money, Mildred's house, Mildred's things. The important thing, Jorge says, leaning forward, is that we're here now, and we're going to help you figure all this out. You shouldn't have to handle such a big inheritance alone. The word inheritance hangs in the air like smoke. I think about Mildred's funeral 3 days ago, how empty it felt with just me, Paul, and a handful of her business associates. How I'd looked around the nearly vacant chapel and wondered if anyone would even remember her. Now suddenly, I have parents who want to help. Mildred's house, my house now, sits on 3 acres of perfectly manicured lawn. I've been here maybe a dozen times in my life, always feeling like an intruder. Today, I'm letting Jorge and Abigail tour their daughter's inheritance. My God, Abigail breathes, running her fingers along the marble countertop. This kitchen is bigger than our first apartment. Jorge's doing that thing rich people do, trying to look casual while obviously calculating value. He's taking pictures. For insurance purposes, he says when he notices me watching. I wander into Mildred's study. Everything is exactly as she left it. Papers sorted by date, pens arranged by color, not a speck of dust anywhere. On the desk, there's a framed photo I've never seen before. It's me at my high school graduation. I'm smiling, holding my diploma, completely unaware that anyone was taking pictures. She kept this? I whisper to the empty room. Chloe? Abigail's voice echoes from the foyer. Honey, we need to talk about practicalities. I find them in the main living room, sitting on Mildred's pristine white sofa like they own the place. Jorge has papers spread across the coffee table. We've been thinking, he says, not looking at me. This is an enormous responsibility for someone your age. All these assets, the maintenance costs, the tax implications. What your father means, Abigail interjects smoothly, is that we want to help you make smart decisions. Maybe consider selling some of the bigger assets, diversifying. Making sure you're financially secure. I haven't even had the will probated yet, I say. Oh, that's just a formality. Jorge waves his hand dismissively. Paul mentioned the estate is completely liquid. No complications. The casual way he mentions Paul makes something cold settle in my stomach. You talked to Paul? Well, yes, we're family. We have a right to understand the situation. Abigail's smile never wavers. He seemed to think it would be wise for us to be involved in your decision-making process. That doesn't sound like Paul at all. Maybe I should call him, I say, reaching for my phone. Oh, don't bother him on a Saturday, Jorge says quickly. We can handle the preliminary discussions. I look around the room that never felt like home, at these people who feel less like parents than strangers with an agenda. The silence stretches between us, heavy and uncomfortable. I need some air, I say, heading toward the back patio. Through the sliding glass doors, I can hear them talking in low voices. I catch fragments. Clearly overwhelmed, needs guidance, could take months if she's difficult. The garden Mildred tended herself stretches out before me. Every flower precisely placed, every hedge perfectly trimmed. It's beautiful in a way that demands respect rather than affection. Like her. I remember the day I told her I was dropping out of college because I couldn't afford it anymore. She'd been pruning roses, her movements sharp and efficient. She didn't look at me when I spoke, just kept cutting stems with surgical precision. Quitting is a choice, she'd said finally. So is finding another way. 3 days later, I found an envelope under my apartment door. Enough money for 1 semester of tuition, nothing more. No note, no conditions, just a chance to choose differently. I never thanked her for it. Now Jorge and Abigail are inside her house, talking about selling her things, spending her money, making plans that don't include honoring the woman who actually raised me. The woman who never said she loved me, but who showed up at my hospital bed. Who never hugged me, but who made sure I could finish school. Who left me everything and never explained why. 3 weeks later, they're everywhere. Jorge has temporarily moved into the pool house to help with estate management. Abigail has taken over the guest suite because it's more practical than driving back and forth every day. They've hired a housekeeper, a groundskeeper, and a financial advisor, all without consulting me. We're just trying to ease the burden, Abigail explains when I find her redecorating the main living room. This place was so cold before. So, Mildred. It needs warmth. She's replaced Mildred's carefully chosen art with family photos, pictures of Jorge and Abigail from vacations I was never invited on, celebrations I never knew about, a whole life that existed parallel to mine. In every single photo, they look happy, complete. Where are the pictures of me? I ask. Abigail pauses, a crystal vase halfway to the mantel. Oh, honey, we don't have many. Mildred was so strict about contact. But we can take new ones. Starting fresh, you know? I walk to where Mildred's photo used to hang, a simple black and white portrait she'd commissioned for her 70th birthday. It captured something essential about her. The straight spine, the direct gaze, the mouth that never quite softened into a smile. Now there's a painting of sunflowers. Where did you put her picture? It was so somber, Jorge calls from the kitchen, where he's apparently reorganizing the spice cabinet. This is your house now, sweetheart. It should reflect your personality. But I'm not sure they know what my personality is. They certainly haven't asked. That afternoon, I call Paul. I need to see you, I say when he picks up. Alone. His office feels like a sanctuary after weeks of Jorge and Abigail's constant chatter. Paul pours me coffee from the same pot he's probably been using for 20 years and settles behind his desk. "They've been calling me," he says without preamble. "A lot." "About what?" "Estate liquidation, asset transfers, setting up trusts." His eyes are serious behind his glasses. "They seem to think I work for them now." The coffee tastes like disappointment. "Do you?" "I work for Mildred's estate, which means I work for you." He pulls out a thick file. "There are some things she wanted me to tell you when you were ready. I think you're ready now." The first document is a letter. Mildred's handwriting, precise as everything else about her. "Chloe, if Paul is showing you this, it means Jorge and Abigail have made contact. I always knew they would, eventually. Money has a way of healing old wounds that were never really healed at all. I need you to understand something about your parents. They didn't fight for you. They signed away their parental rights when you were 4 years old in exchange for a check that covered their credit card debt. They didn't want you then. They want you now because you have something they need. I never told you this because I wanted you to make your own judgments about people. I wanted you to learn to see through pretty words and empty promises. It's the most valuable skill anyone can have. The second document will explain the rest. M. My hands are shaking as I reach for the next paper. It's a contract, dated 20 years ago. Jorge and Abigail's signatures at the bottom, neat and final. Above their names, a single line. We hereby relinquish all parental rights to the minor child, Chloe Martinez, in perpetuity. The payment amount is circled in red, $50,000. I was worth $50,000 to them. Once. She kept this all these years? My voice sounds like it's coming from underwater. Paul nods. She kept everything, every document, every communication, every attempt they made to contact her for money over the years. And there were many. They tried to get money from her? Regularly. Usually around Christmas or when they were between jobs. Always with the same story. How much they missed you, how they wanted to be a family again, how a little financial help would let them get back on their feet and petition for custody. The room spins a little. What did she do? She never responded, not once. Paul's voice is gentle. Until her will, which was her response to everything. I think about Jorge and Abigail in my house, their house now in their minds, redecorating, planning, spending. I think about Mildred, sitting in this same chair, reading letter after letter from the people who sold their daughter, who only wanted her back when there was profit in it. What else is in the file? Paul's smile is thin. Insurance, you might say. Your aunt was very thorough. I don't go home that night. Instead, I check into a hotel downtown and sit on the bed reading through 20 years of documentation that Mildred collected like evidence. Letter after letter from Jorge and Abigail, each one a masterpiece of manipulation. Dear Mildred, we've matured so much since our mistakes. We want to give Chloe the loving family she deserves. They needed $15,000 for a business opportunity. We've been praying for guidance about our daughter. Perhaps it's time for her to know her real parents. Their house was in foreclosure. Chloe must be so lonely with only you for family. Children need warmth, not just stability. Jorge had been arrested for embezzlement and needed bail money. Every plea for money disguised as concern for me. Every attempt to manipulate Mildred into believing they'd changed, grown, become the parents they never were. She never sent them a penny, but she kept every letter, every email, every voicemail transcript, building a case against them that they didn't even know existed. The final document in the pile is a private investigator's report dated 6 months ago. Photos of Jorge and Abigail at casino tables, luxury restaurants, weekend trips to Monaco. A detailed accounting of their debt, their spending habits, their history of failed business ventures funded by other people's money. At the bottom, a handwritten note from Mildred, for when she needs to know who they really are. My phone has been buzzing all evening. Missed calls from Jorge and Abigail. Text messages asking where I am, if I'm okay, reminding me that they're worried and that family sticks together. I turn the phone off. The next morning, I drive home to find them waiting in the kitchen with coffee and concerned expressions. Chloe, sweetheart, we were so worried. Abigail rushes to hug me. Where were you? Paul's office, reading. Something flickers in Jorge's eyes. Reading what? I set the file on the counter between us. 20 years of their lies spread out like a map of deception. The silence that follows is different from Mildred's silences. Hers were purposeful, controlled. This one is full of panic and calculation. "Honey," Abigail starts, her voice higher than usual. "Whatever that is, you have to understand. $50,000. I keep my voice level, the way Mildred taught me without ever saying she was teaching me anything." "That's what I was worth to you." Jorge clears his throat. "We were young. Stupid. You thought you'd rather have cash than a daughter." I close the file. "And now you think you'd rather have millions than dignity. That's not fair," Abigail says. And for the first time since they walked back into my life, she sounds genuinely angry. "You don't know what it was like. We weren't ready to be parents. Mildred had everything. Money, stability, time. We thought we were doing what was best for you. By selling me. By giving you opportunities we couldn't provide." The kitchen fills with the kind of quiet that comes after a truth no one wanted to speak. Outside, the automatic sprinklers turn on, watering Mildred's perfect garden with mechanical precision. "We made mistakes," Jorge says finally. "But we're here now. We want to make things." I look at these strangers who share my DNA, who walked away from me for money and walked back to me for more money, who've spent 3 weeks in my house without asking a single question about my life, my dreams, my fears, who know nothing about me except that I'm suddenly worth knowing. "Make things right," I repeat. "By helping me spend my inheritance? By being your family," Abigail says. "By giving you what Mildred never could." "And what's that?" "Love," she says, like it's obvious. "Warmth, affection." She was so cold, Chloe. So distant. You deserve parents who actually care about you. I think about Mildred sitting beside my hospital bed for 3 days straight, never leaving, never sleeping, just watching monitors and talking quietly to doctors. I think about the envelope of tuition money that appeared with no strings attached, about the photo on her desk that I was never supposed to see, about the will that gave me everything she'd worked for, and the letters that showed me why. She did care about me, I say quietly. She just didn't lie about it. They don't leave gracefully. Jorge argues about family rights and moral obligations. Abigail cries, real tears, I think, though I'm no longer sure I can tell the difference between her genuine emotions and her performance emotions. "We're your parents," she says, standing in the foyer with her designer suitcase. "That has to mean something." "It did," I tell her. "It meant $50,000. Paul arrives while they're still packing the pool house. He doesn't say much, just stands beside me and watches them load their car with things they somehow accumulated during their 3-week stay. A painting from the guest room, a set of china from the dining room, small items that they probably assumed I wouldn't notice. "We'll contest the will," Jorge calls from the driveway. "You can't just shut out your family." Paul steps forward, his voice calm and professional. "Actually, Jorge, that would be difficult. Since you legally relinquished all parental rights 20 years ago, you have no standing to challenge anything." The look that passes between my parents is the first honest communication I've seen from them. It's pure calculation, the silent arithmetic of people weighing their options and finding them lacking. They drive away without looking back. The house feels enormous in their absence. For 3 weeks, it's been full of voices and plans and the constant hum of people who want things. Now it's just me and the silence Mildred left behind. I walk through the rooms slowly, seeing them clearly for the first time. This isn't a cold house. It's a careful one. Every piece of furniture chosen for quality over flash. Every book on the shelves actually read, the spines worn from handling. Every photograph precisely placed not for decoration, but for memory. In her bedroom, I find a drawer I never knew existed. Inside, every letter I ever wrote her. Thank you notes for birthday gifts. A Christmas card from when I was 12. The application essay for my college scholarship program, with her notes in the margins. Not corrections, encouragements. Good argument here. This paragraph shows real insight. You write like someone who thinks carefully. This is valuable. At the bottom of the drawer, there's something that makes me sit down hard on her perfectly made bed. It's a photo album, thin and worn. The first page, me at the hospital when I was born, tiny and red-faced, with a note in her handwriting. First day with Chloe. She's perfect. Every page after that, Me at different ages in different places, me learning to walk in her garden, me reading in her study while she worked, me sleeping on her couch during visits. Me, documented and treasured and loved in the quiet way that doesn't need words. The last entry is from my college graduation. She's written, "I'm proud of who she's becoming. I hope she'll understand someday that love doesn't always look like what people expect it to look like. I understand now. Love that doesn't lie to you about people's motives. Love that doesn't promise what it can't deliver. Love that shows up in hospital rooms and pays tuition bills and builds walls between you and people who would use you. Love that trusts you enough to let you make your own mistakes and wise enough to make sure those mistakes don't destroy you." The phone rings. Paul, checking on me. "How are you holding up?" I'm sitting in my dead aunt's bedroom, crying over a photo album that proves she loved me more than the people who created me ever did. I'm 24 years old, alone in a mansion that represents a lifetime of careful choices made by someone who never explained herself. "I'm okay," I tell him, and realize it's true. I think I'm okay. 6 months later, I'm standing in the same coffee shop where Jorge and Abigail first tried to reclaim their daughter. Paul sits across from me, reading legal documents with the concentration of a man who's spent 40 years making sure people's intentions are properly recorded. "They're really not going to stop," he says, not looking up from the papers. This is the third attorney they've hired. The latest lawsuit is more creative than the first two. Now they're claiming emotional distress, arguing that Mildred manipulated me against them and that the inheritance was the result of undue influence. They want the will overturned and the estate divided equally among Mildred's natural heirs, which, they argue, includes them as my parents. "Do they have a case?" I ask. Paul removes his glasses and rubs his eyes. "No, but they have persistence, and persistence can be expensive to fight." I think about the Jorge and Abigail I met 6 months ago. Concerned, loving, eager to help their overwhelmed daughter navigate sudden wealth. Then I think about the people who drove away with stolen china, promising legal battles and righteous anger. The transformation was so complete it was almost admirable. "There's something else," Paul continues. "Something Mildred left instructions about. She said to give it to you only if they proved to be exactly who she thought they were." He slides an envelope across the table. My name on the front in Mildred's precise handwriting. Inside, a single page and a smaller sealed envelope. "Chloe, if you're reading this, Jorge and Abigail have shown you who they really are. I'm sorry it had to happen, but I'm not sorry you know." The smaller envelope contains something that will end their legal challenges permanently. Use it only if you want to. You don't owe anyone your peace of mind, not even me. You have choices now. Real ones. That's all I ever wanted for you. M.P.S. The garden needs attention in September. The roses especially. The second envelope is thicker. Inside, an audio recording device and a note that says simply, October 15th, 2019. Jorge called asking for money for Abigail's surgery. Press play. I look at Paul. He nods. Jorge's voice fills the coffee shop, tinny but clear through the device's small speaker. "She doesn't need to know we called, Mildred. Abigail's procedure is expensive, and we thought maybe you could help without making it about Chloe. We're not asking for her. We're asking for us. We've stayed away like you wanted. Doesn't that count for something?" Mildred's voice calm and measured. "You stayed away because I paid you to stay away. Don't rewrite history to make yourself feel better. That was different. We were young. You were 28 and 31, old enough to know that children aren't commodities." A pause. Then Jorge again, his voice harder. "Fine, but Chloe's going to inherit everything someday anyway, right? So really, you'd just be giving us our share early." "Your share of what?" "Of her inheritance. We're her parents. When you die, we'll have a claim to whatever you leave her. Legally, I mean." Mildred's laugh is soft and terrible. "Jorge, you signed away any claim to Chloe 20 years ago. You have no legal right to anything she inherits. You have no legal right to her. But morally, you sold your daughter. There is no moral argument you can make to me." The recording ends. I sit in the coffee shop silence, holding evidence of exactly who my parents are and always have been. People who see love as a transaction and family as a business opportunity. People who plan to profit from my grief before I was even grieving. Paul is watching me carefully. What do you want to do? I think about Mildred in her garden, pruning roses with surgical precision, making cuts that looked cruel, but helped things grow stronger. I think about the choice she's given me. I can use this recording to destroy Jorge and Abigail's legal challenges permanently. I can expose them completely, ruin their reputations, maybe even pursue legal action for fraud. Or I can simply let them exhaust themselves fighting a battle they were never going to win. Send this to their attorney, I tell Paul, with a message. They have 48 hours to withdraw all legal challenges, or we release this to every news outlet that's been covering the heartbroken parents' story. Paul smiles. It's the first time I've seen him look genuinely pleased in months. And after that, I never think about them again. 2 days later, Paul calls. The lawsuits have been withdrawn. Jorge and Abigail's attorney has strongly advised them against any further legal action. They want to call you, Paul says, to clear the air. No, I say, surprising myself with how easy the word comes. I'm done clearing air that was never meant to be breathable. That afternoon, I work in Mildred's garden. The roses need attention, like she said they would. I'm not good at gardening yet, but I'm learning. Some cuts look cruel when you make them. But the plants grow back stronger, with more blooms and deeper roots. I'm beginning to understand that love isn't always gentle. Sometimes it's sharp and precise and makes decisions that look cold from the outside, but grow into protection over time. 3 years have passed since I inherited more than money from. I inherited her way of seeing people clearly, her understanding that actions speak louder than words, and her knowledge that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people show you exactly who they are. The house is mine now in more than legal terms. I've kept most of Mildred's furniture, but I've added things she never would have chosen. Bright pillows, plants that bloom messily, books that aren't organized by. It's become a place where her precision and my warmth coexist, like two different languages that somehow mean the same thing. Jorge and Abigail surface occasionally in my peripheral vision. I see them sometimes in the society pages of the local paper, at charity events, art gallery openings, the kind of parties where appearing generous is more important than being generous. They've apparently found other wealthy acquaintances to orbit around, other people whose goodwill might be monetizable. They've never tried to contact me directly since the lawsuits disappeared. I think they finally understand that some bridges, once burned, don't get rebuilt. Last week, I got a letter from Abigail, not requesting money or demanding access, just a simple card that said, "I hope you're happy." Inside, a photo of her and Jorge at some resort, both of them tan and smiling for the camera. I put the card in the same drawer where Mildred kept all their other letters. Not because I'm collecting evidence anymore, but because I'm done pretending history didn't happen. Paul stops by every few months to check on me, though I suspect it's as much about friendship now as legal necessity. We have coffee in Mildred's kitchen and talk about books, current events, the small business I've started with part of the inheritance, a foundation that helps kids age out of foster care get college education. She would have liked that, Paul said when I told him about the foundation. How do you know? Because she was one of those kids once. Did you know that? I didn't. There's still so much about Mildred I'm learning, usually through casual comments from Paul or discoveries in her papers. She was careful about what stories she told, but the important ones are all here if you know how to look. The foundation keeps me busy in a way that feels purposeful rather than. I interview scholarship candidates, review applications, make decisions about who gets help and who doesn't. Sometimes I have to say no to people who really need it. Sometimes I say yes to people who surprise me. I'm getting better at seeing through pretty words to actual intentions. It's a skill Mildred taught me without ever saying she was teaching it. My phone buzzes. A text from a number I don't recognize. Chloe, this is your cousin Marcus. I heard about your success with the foundation. I'd love to reconnect. We were close when we were kids. Can we grab dinner? I've never had a cousin named Marcus. I delete the message without responding. Some lessons, once learned, become automatic. Outside, the roses are blooming. Huge, complex flowers that took 3 years of careful pruning to achieve. Mildred was right about them needing attention in September. She was right about most things, actually, though she never insisted I take her. She just created conditions where I could figure things out for myself. People often ask me if I miss having family. The question used to make me sad, but now it just makes me thoughtful. I have Paul, who shows up reliably without wanting anything. I have the teenagers in my scholarship program who write me letters about their dreams and achievements. I have neighbors who wave when they see me gardening, co-workers at the foundation who've become friends over shared work. I have the kind of family you choose rather than inherit, and I have Mildred's memory. Not the cold, distant woman Jorge and Abigail described, but the precise, protective guardian who loved me enough to let me discover love doesn't always wear a smile. Sometimes it wears work clothes and stays up all night in hospital chairs. Sometimes it plants roses and teaches you to prune them correctly. Sometimes it writes a will that gives you everything, including the wisdom to know who deserves to share it. I kept the silence Mildred left me, and I've learned to use it the way she did. Not as absence, but as presence. Not as emptiness, but as space for the right people to fill. They thought quiet meant weak. They learned the difference.